the worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach, and fitness expert, Lisa Goldenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa G, your host. You're at the top of your game, yet the game is changing faster than ever. Strategies that got you here aren't the ones that'll keep you here. The pressure is relentless and the fear of obsolescence looms large. That's why I'm here. Welcome to the new podcast series, Disrupted: How to Be Gritty and Unlock Performance. This is your chance where I sit down with today's top experts in business, mindset, wellness, and success to help you master disruption and thrive.
Thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon.
Hey there, disruptors and go-getters. Lisa G here. Today's podcast is going to light a fire under you like never before. Thrilled to introduce a man whose life story reads like an epic novel, triumph, tragedy, and transcendence. He's not just a coach, he's a living testament to the power of resilience, rebirth, and grit. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the one, the only James Arthur Ray. He isn't just your everyday success story. He's a New York Times bestselling author, philosopher, consultant, and let me tell you, he's transformed over 1 million lives worldwide through his coaching and leadership program and his book, Harmonic Wealth. It's not just a book, it's a movement. But here's where it gets real. Well, James, I don't want to tell your story. I want to welcome you to the podcast, and we'll jump into your story and the comeback story, which was featured in CNN documentary Enlighten Us. And I know you're on a mission that's nothing short of heroic to impact 1 million lives. So, James, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It's great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, I'm really thrilled. I've been following your career for a long time. We've all been disrupted. I know you were in a very big and public way, but let's start there with resilience, grit, and your story. Let's jump into it.
Okay, so let me do my best to condense it because it's kind of a galloping adventure. I wrote, and then you can flesh it out in whatever areas you'd like to do that, Lisa.
Okay.
I rose to the pinnacle of my profession post The Secret, which maybe some of your viewers are a little bit familiar with
Yeah.
that phenomenon and how it went worldwide. Just prior to it going worldwide, I was about ready to throw in the towel. It had some very difficult times, and I say it took me 20 years to become an overnight success, but it happened very quickly. After The Secret came out, I rose to the pinnacle, and I was on all the big shows, and I was a New York Times best-selling author, and I judged the Miss America contest, and I did all kinds of very, very public things. And I built an Inc. 500 company at $10 million a year, and I was doing very well living in Beverly Hills. And that all came to a crashing halt in 2009. My team, my company, and I conducted a 5-day retreat in Sedona, Arizona. And it was a 5-day deep dive into the drivers of your behavior. And what most people believe the drivers of their behavior are things like my sales ability, my marketing skills, the economy, the government, all things external. That's not true. I'm not saying those things aren't important. They don't have an influence on us. And talk about disruption, those things are certainly in disruption today. And yet, the drivers, Lisa, are not outside at all. The drivers are inside. And so
Right.
we were diving deeply into these unresolved emotional issues that psychology tells us happen about 14 years of age and earlier. And because we're so young, we don't have the resources to know how to deal with those. And so we suppress them. And yet they still drive behavior. And so one of the most powerful things that you and I can do to empower ourselves is to make the unconscious conscious, is to bring those things out of your unconscious up into your conscious awareness so you can observe them and say, oh, here's my blocks and barriers, and I can heal them and integrate them and set myself free. Well, it was very arduous work, and we were out in the middle of the desert. We're working long hours. There were 55 participants, and because of the nature of the program, I became very intimately involved with all the participants, and we laughed together, we cried together, we hugged, and we had some tremendous gains and growth in our life. At the end, and this was in 2009, at the end of that 5-day experience, we chose to do an experiential learning activity called the Sweat Lodge, which we had done 5 years prior. And it was always like a graduation event. It was a way, Lisa, to experientially say all this hard work I've done mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I'm going to take it into this tough environment, which is going to be difficult to complete, and I'm going to push through, hopefully, and move through this. And when I do, then I'll know experientially that I can do the same thing back in my life, my relationships, and my business.
Okay.
Every single year, it was a highlight. People came out, they were nervous, they didn't know if they could do it. It was all voluntary, and yet they would come out and feel victorious. Well, in 2009, something went horribly wrong, horrible accident, and 3 people lost their lives that day in the lodge. It broke my heart. You know, if you've ever lost someone that you love and care about, you know how that feels. And
Right.
it literally broke my heart. And yet it didn't end there. It felt like that was more than enough. And yet it didn't end there because the state of Arizona came after me for manslaughter. They charged me with
Wow.
crime. Now, if you know anything about the legal system, manslaughter is intentional harm. That's ludicrous. I mean, anyone who's in business and anyone who was thinking even halfway knew it was an accident. And yet here was this guy who was all over Oprah and Larry King and the Today Show. And boy, let's take down the guy from Beverly Hills and the big media star. And boy, did they. They came at me guns blazing. They charged me with manslaughter. They wanted 30 years. And it was not only horrendous to lose 3 people I really loved and cared about, which was the worst, but I lost everything else as a result. You know, I lost my home, I lost my Inc. 500 company, I lost my so-called friends, people in the industry who loved me and wanted to
Right.
venture with me and wanted to be on stage with me, all turned their back, with the exception of 2, Rhonda Byrne and Bob Proctor, God rest his soul. Um, Everyone else tucked tail and ran, and
Yep.
and so that hurt. That really hurt. And so, long story short, you know, the jury couldn't 4 month trial. They wanted 30 years. If they'd have gotten what they were asking for, I wouldn't be here with you today, Lisa.
Right.
But thank God they didn't. They couldn't find one shred of evidence that there was any intentional harm because there wasn't. It was a horrible, tragic accident. And yet I learned so much about the liberties we don't have in this country, the things that we've been conditioned to believe that are just not true. And we can talk about some of those things if you'd like, but nonetheless, our system is not built on justice. It's built on financial gain and power and greed. And
Right.
and so fortunately the jury said no, no manslaughter. But if you know anything about the legal system, there was a lesser inclusive called negligence, and so they convicted me of negligence, and I went to prison for 2 years. I came out in 2013, and in 2013 I was homeless, I was alone, and I was $20 million in debt, and so that was just not that long ago. And so that's kind of about the low of lows. So I went from the high of highs to the low of lows, and the everything that's happened since that time has been me practicing and applying the things that I've taught and the things that I've studied for the majority of my life. And there couldn't be a better opportunity, in my opinion, than prison and what I've been through over the last 11, 12, 13 years to be able to do that. So I know experientially, if you're hurting today as a viewer, if you're having a tough time, I know how that feels, not by from theory, but from real life and real experience. So I'll stop there, Lisa, and let you kind of direct from that.
Well, first of all, James, I really want to commend you on your vulnerable share. I mean, I know this is public information, but it's so obvious how painful that is to be accused of something that wasn't manslaughter, obviously, and intentional, and how painful I can see in your eyes that that experience was. But we've all been disrupted lately, not in such a public and painful way. I don't know what your story is out there, but I want to know, to the audience, your story, James, of how you can help us. Okay, so that happened. Your grit that you show by still being here and being willing to tell the story, to me, is one that we can all learn from, because we don't learn in the good times as much as we learn in the bad times. Like, how can you encourage other people to find that kind of grit and resilience to rebuild? Like, how did you go from the depths of despair and being taken down in such a big way to where you are today, rebuilding your leadership and coaching program and speaking?
Well, it's been a long road, and I think there's several things that occurred, Lisa. First of all, I had to do some real soul searching because there's a lot of trolls. You're familiar with trolls. There's a lot of
Oh,
trolls.
yeah, I know trolls.
Yeah, we all know. If you don't know trolls, you're not doing anything great. That's my opinion. If you're not making waves, you're playing in the shallow end of the pool. And so there were so many people that came at me, and let me just unfortunately say, the people who were the most hateful were the so-called spiritual people.
Right.
They were the
I believe you.
most hateful, most unforgiving, most judgmental, and the whole industry of personal development, most hateful, most judgmental. You know,
Right.
it was like I had leprosy or something, and I get it. And it took me a long time. That hurt. It took me a long time to understand that. I don't agree with it, but to forgive it and to understand it for myself. You
Right.
forgive for yourself. Whether you
Exactly.
say, well, maybe some people don't deserve it. It doesn't matter. You forgive for yourself because you let it go. And so I had to do some real soul searching. And as I stood in the desert in 2013, I asked myself some real probing questions. Who are you? Because everyone is calling you all kinds of names, from cult leader to murderer to now criminal and so on and so felon. And who are you really? And I had to come to a point where I know who I am. And if you think I'm someone different, that's okay, but I don't care because I know who I am, and it doesn't matter to me what you think of me. That's between me and God. And I had to come to that point in my life. Who are you? Beyond all the fame and all the fortune and all the millions. At one point I was worth north of $20 million, and it was gone like that. And so I learned that, hey, how important is that really? Because if it can be gone like that, then it's not real. It's really not. And it's certainly not that valuable. You can use it, and I'm not anti, but I'm just telling you that's not what life is all about. And so I had to do those kinds of probing things, standing there in the desert. And I call this part of my life James Arthur Ray 3.0, which tells you there was a 1.0 and a 2.0, and there's been some previous difficulties and disruptions and challenges, but that's how we grow. And you're so accurate. I totally agree with you. We grow the most in the crucible of challenge. We don't grow the most when we're smelling the roses and sipping the fine wine. God, I wish that were true, but it's just not true. We
Right.
grow the most in the crucible of challenge. So that's what I would say first and foremost. Come to a point, if for you as the viewer, that you know who you are. And it's not what you do. So many times I ask people, who are you? Well, I'm a mom. No, that's a role you play. That's not,
Right.
well, I'm a podcaster. No, that's a job you have. That's not who you are. Who are you really deep down inside when all those things are gone? Because here's what I can promise you. Your true wealth is not what you have. Your true wealth is what you're left with when all you have is gone. That's that's how you measure your true wealth. What are you left with when everything around you is gone? Your friends, your family, your colleagues, your reputation, all those things. And when you can get to that point, you have rock bottom, and from rock bottom, you have a firm foundation to build from.
I admire that so much. I know as an entrepreneur, and many entrepreneurs I've talked to, many business leaders, it's never a straight shot. It's just staying the course, it's rebuilding the way that you have. And I know that you have a strong spiritual belief. And is that something that helps keep you going when you hit rock bottom and you have to start over?
Absolutely. I really feel like I'm here by the grace of God today, because there were times, particularly early on, Lisa, because it's really easy when everyone supposedly loves you, you know,
Right.
and I say supposedly because it's not real. It really isn't. It's very shallow and it's very short-lived. And yet, when I was on the top and everybody was like, "Oh my God, James, you've changed my life," and I, this and that, and I love you so much. Well, it's really easy to be spiritual, and to feel like you're really dialed in. But when everything gets yanked away, there was time, and I'll be straight up. There was a period of time, and I write about this in my latest book, The Business of Redemption. I was angry at God. You know,
Right.
I sat in my first month in prison. I was in solitary confinement on right next to death row, uh,
Wow.
because I was so dangerous. I guess they thought I was going to whip a sweat lodge out of my pocket or something. I don't know, but nonetheless, um, I was angry. I was really angry at God, and I had this conversation with God, if you will, and I said, this is my reward after over 250 days a year on the road, and only sleeping in my own bed 2 nights a week max, and just going, giving. This is my reward. And what came back to me is, oh, so you did it to be rewarded? Whoa,
Wow.
wait a minute.
Mic drop.
Yeah, yeah. Because if that's why you did it, that's not the right reason. Well, why me? Why not you? You want to be protected? You want to be special? Oh, wow. Okay. And so I had this real, my dad is a Protestant minister, and he used to call it a come to Jesus. I had this real come to God, if you will, with myself and with God about, hey, why did I do what I do? Was it genuine? Do you do what you do because it's moral, because it's right, because it's principled, because it's virtuous? Or do you do what you do because you think you're going to get this big reward? And unfortunately, so many people, in my opinion, have this trading game with God.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to be a good person because I'm going to die and go to heaven and get rewarded when I die. Now that's very traditional, but it's not very accurate, not even according to the Christian tradition, because the Christ said the kingdom of heaven is within. So what a surprise. I'm not going to die and go to some condo on a cloud. No, the kingdom of heaven is within. If you're going to experience heaven, it's got to be here and now. And so to the degree that I can do that and do for the sake of doing, that's very Buddhist. And I've studied all great traditions, Lisa. I studied with a Zen master for years. And they talk about you do for the sake of doing, not for the sake of getting or receiving, but you do because it's the right thing to do. So long answer to your question, I tend to get a little verbose. But long answer to the question, yes, I do have a very strong relationship with God, and it's very, very important to me. And I think it's stronger now than it ever has been, given what I've gone through.
Well, I only wanted to ask that question because it seems so obvious to me that you are a spiritual person. And I love the introspection that you show where you're in prison. And so many people would be in victim mindset. And I'm sure it's not something that you don't go through to get to coming out the other side. But I'd love to even ask you another question because it's harmonic wealth. I did read your book back in the day. And I want to know for our audience, now that we know we've all been through quite a bit, not what you've been through, James, but we've all been there. The last 3.5 years have been nothing but disruptive, and it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. How can we create some harmonic wealth for ourselves?
Really great question. Thank you for asking. I think it's going to only accelerate this year, quite frankly. I hope I'm wrong. But it isn't going to go away anytime soon. We're going through a tremendous upheaval in our world, and any thinking individual, which I'm assuming a lot of your viewers, if not all of them are, can't help but observe what's going on and be reminded of the rise and fall of great empires. I mean, we're going through tremendous disruption and breakdown. But here's what I know, and I know this, is that every significant breakthrough is preceded by a breakdown. Because for something new to emerge, there has to be a place for it to emerge into. Does that make sense to you? It
Yeah, I
got to
love
break
that.
You've got to break down and clear away the old. Let's look at as simple as a romantic relationship. You're not going to get your dream mate as long as you're hanging out with Mr. Wrong or Mrs. Wrong. You're just not. You have to have that breakdown. You have to wipe that slate clean and create a space for a new emergence, something new to emerge. And that's what we're going through in our world right now. And so if you can understand that, some people are living in fear. I say, don't live in fear, live in faith because God has a plan. It's just hard to see it sometimes. And sometimes you really wish it would unfold faster. you know, I heard once, it
Yeah, me,
happens.
I do that timeline thing. You always have this timeline like I'll get X by Y and it's all going to get better. And
Right.
it's not on our timeline, is it?
No, it's on God's timeline. And here's what I've learned, Lisa, in my years of experience. It's probably going to take twice as long as you expect it to take and cost twice as much as you think it's going to cost. That's just
Agree.
that's
A
just how
hundred
it
percent.
unfolds. And so you've gotta that's where resilience comes in. You've got to be in it for the right reasons, because if you're not, you won't see it through. And I've seen that time and time and time again. And please, those of you of the younger generation, listen to me, because so many people, oh, I'll give it 18 months. Please. 18 months is nothing. You've got to give it until what? Until you get it is how long you have to stay with it. And if you don't pick something that is of utmost importance to you, then you won't have the power and the energy to see it through. And that's what we're all being tested with right now. I think it's a brilliant time to be alive. It's not it's not fun, and it's not comfortable in all cases, but it's a brilliant time to be alive. And every single one of us, Lisa, is going to be able to come to the end of our life and look back and say, what side of history did I stand on? You know, did I fold, or did I stand for what I believed in? Because here's the fact. I've been canceled numerous times. My social media accounts have been canceled. I've had three banks shut me down. I've had all kinds of people try to get me to stop. I'm not gonna stop. Uh,
Yay! I love that.
I mean, I'm not, and I'm not gonna back off either. Because I'll tell you, here's a quick example, but Instagram shut down my account during COVID, not because I was deriding the medical industry. I wasn't. I was saying take vitamin D, take vitamin C, get sunshine, get exercise, eat healthy. 30,000 followers gone because I wasn't on the controlling narrative. And so, thank God there are more and more people like Elon Musk who bought X, and some others who have the courage to come out now and start to say, hey, wait a second. Maybe everything we've been told and taught is not true. Maybe
Right.
everything we're being sold is a bill of goods. And that's good news. It doesn't mean let me qualify that it's good news. And I'll do it like this. If you've ever had a nightmare, Lisa, we've all had one. And you wake up in the middle of the night and you sit up in bed, and you're breathing rapidly and you're sweating profusely, and you go, "Oh wow, man, I'm so grateful it was a nightmare." But please remember, it was the nightmare that woke you up. You follow?
That's another mic drop moment. I mean, there's so many of them here. I love the resilience and grit that you show firsthand and questioning things. You can't just believe things without questioning them and being a free thinker.
Free thinker is so key. One of the things that my wife Bersaba and I talk about in our work is that we really want to create independent thinkers. And most people think that they're independent thinkers, but they're really not. Because what most people think is thinking is just rerunning old programming that's been handed to them and handed to their parents and handed to their parents' parents. And they think they're thinking for themselves and making their own decisions, but they're really not. They're running on unconscious autopilot. And so to be an independent thinker is to think for yourself and to be able to say, Lisa, I appreciate your opinion and I respect your opinion, and I have a completely different opinion, and that's okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
You don't
It
agree with
used
my
to be
opinion?
okay, and now it's not okay. Everybody is just so polarized. It shouldn't
Right.
be that way.
Right. We've got so many people creating division in the name of unity. We've got so many things going on in the world right now. Diversity is really creating division. It's not creating unity. It's not creating mutual respect. It's creating division. It's creating separation. And I do believe that's by design, because uh, the old system is breaking down. And let me tell you my opinion on this is that if you go all the way back to to way before you and I were born, we started we started moving our value systems from morality and principles and virtue and God, and we started shifting them, and you can see it even more so in recent times in the 50s and in the 60s, where now all of a sudden it's two working parents instead of one. And kids come home, the latchkey kids, they come home by themselves and take care of themselves. And the family is now pulled apart. And God is taken out of the school systems, and we can't pray. Oh, heaven forbid that we can pray, but we can study sex in school. I mean, as a kid, for God's sakes. And so these little things have crept up on us little by little by little by little because we've been asleep at the wheel. And we have traded money and materialism for morality. And money has become our God. And so we've lost this. I'm working on a new book right now. It's not going to be out till maybe the end of the year, but I call it a vertical relationship. And of course, God is not vertical, but it's a metaphor. This vertical relationship with a higher power, with a hierarchy that is bigger and more than us. And throughout history, even our ancestors have always looked to the heavens for something bigger than us. And then we have this horizontal relationship. So we have a vertical relationship and a horizontal relationship. And when the vertical relationship is gone or degrades, then all we have is horizontal. Well, how do we now formulate our values and our principles and our beliefs? We formulate them horizontally by looking around at other people and looking around at our social circles, and we're saying, oh, okay, I see, money is God. Money's the most important thing. Materialism is our faith. If I have enough material goods, then I have faith. And so little by little we've gotten away from center. And I believe what happened to me when everything got swept out from under me, Lisa, is I came back to the heart. I came back to center, and I came back to, hey, here's what's really important. Here's what's going to last. And that's where I'm going to come from for the rest of my days.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your real story and your actual experience and resilience and grit. Where can people find more harmonic wealth and more of you, James Arthur Ray?
Well, I'm all over. So far, I'm all over social media. On Instagram, I'm James Arthur and Bear Ray. My wife and I have a joint account now. Had to sneak that one in after they shut me down. And I'm on X as James A. Ray, and on Facebook, I've been shut down twice, but I do have an account again now. But the main place to go, and I have a gift for your viewers. Actually, we've mentioned harmonic wealth. If they'll go to harmonicwealthglobal.com/book, then they can get a free copy of my New York Times bestseller, Harmonic Wealth. It's an e-copy, and you'll get it right away. Just put in your information, and we'll send it to you right away. Again, it's harmonicwealthglobal.com/book. And I'd love to share that with you. And I think it's really important to have comprehensive wealth in today's world, particularly in turbulent times.
Well, thank you for being a fabulous guest on Disrupted.
Thanks for having me. Keep doing